Okay, it is 1:01 p.m. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. So the first thing that this is a committee meeting for the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee for Ocean Pines Association, and we're a hybrid meeting because obviously we are all here. So what we like to do at the beginning is we establish quorum, which we do have because we have all 5 of our committee members here. And then I wanted to, this is something I've added, I would like us to, because of these new policies and everything, I feel like we should, as a group, go ahead and vote and be okay with recording the meeting, okay? We have always agreed to do it. I just want to be a little bit more formal about it this time and just say, somebody would make a motion to that we as a committee consent to recording our meeting, and then a second and all of that. I just feel like it might be a little bit better if we go ahead and acknowledge that we're recording the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So does anybody on the committee want to make a motion to?
So motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion on it? All right. All in favor of continuing to record our this current meeting and moving forward, we can confirm each time that we do, or we can say that we'll, as a committee, we prefer to record our meetings. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion passes. So obviously we're already recording, so we're just cleaning that up, that process up. Next thing on the agenda that I like to do, and since we have a new face in person here, I would like us to introduce ourselves. My name is Laura Pangratz. I am the committee chairperson for this committee. And I have owned a home in Ocean Pines for 8 years and have been full-time for a year now, full-time resident for a year now. So who would like to go next?
Bob Hilligus. I've been in Ocean Pines for 23 years.
Very good. Okay.
Steve Jacobs. I'm a member of the board. Been in Ocean Pines working on 3 years, I think.
He is our board liaison.
Keith Kaiser, full-time resident, 9 years.
Pam Ferendi. We've had our home in Ocean Pines since 1991, and we've lived here full-time since 2015.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Augie?
Hi, August Flengy. We've had a home in the Pines since 2014, and we're part-time residents there.
Perfect. Welcome. So thank you all. And we've already introduced our board liaison, but we do have a guest here. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Jim Trumbull Association member for going on 22 years.
Okay. And past president of this committee. So very knowledgeable. All right. I just feel like it's always best practice for us to introduce ourselves so that anybody who, if and when they can see the recording, they know who we are. Okay, next thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I have it up on the screen. Okay. So let me.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. So, next thing on the agenda, now this is where the tricky part is because it's not sharing like I wanted it to. So I'm gonna have to stop sharing for a minute and see if I can go back so I can pull up our minutes from yeah, okay. All right. Okay, these are the minutes from our January 27th meeting. Can you please take a look at that and let me know if there is.
I have a question with the questions that are noted on the,
Okay.
could find my copy of it, I'd be better off.
We have any-
I got it someplace here.
That is the one thing about us, we got lots of paper. Yes, we do.
Got more paper than we need.
The,
Here, it's just
the one
video.
comment that, Augie question had put on the side was, does the room have a new name? It's now technically called the administrative conference room, administrative building conference room, but we call it the gray room because of the new paint color.
That's fine.
Formerly known as the peach room. So, and you can spell gray however you like. And then the other missing information that Augie was asking about was the last time we had a reporter from the Bayside Gazette attend as a guest, and her name is Cindy Hoffman.
Okay. And then the last question is, what time did we adjourn the meeting?
Forgot to write down the exact time, but I know we went over a little.
Yeah, I think you're close enough, but I couldn't find a video to verify it.
Right. I would say 3:15 is good enough
It's good.
for us because it was right around there. I mean, it's not like it went to 4 or anything, and we're saying 3. So I think we can stick with 3:15.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any other questions about the minutes?
No, I make a motion to approve it with those corrections or additions, whichever it may be.
Okay.
Second,
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of accepting and approving the minutes as amended and presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Now we gotta go back.
Next is. Yeah.
All right. Let me check it here out.
Do have a question.
Uh-huh.
Before we get started, why don't we suspend Robert's rules so we can
Yes,
have
that'll be
Jim
the next-
participate
that'll be the next
throughout
thing
the
we
meeting?
do. Yep, before we start talking, yeah. We had just had to get through all of those formalities, so let me see if it goes back. Okay. Yeah. This time, I'm still gonna have to play with the screen sharing bit because, last time I had it figured out a little bit better. This time it feels like it won't let me have the screen up and then move from document to document. So, okay, so let's see, we approved the minutes from the January 27th meeting. Now we have public comments. Is there any guest who wants to make like an official public comment or anything like that? Oh, we're good. Okay. All right. And since no one else is here or online, we will close that option. Next on the agenda is Chairman's report. Which is the second page here.
Is that a typo?
Sorry. Can't talk and swallow at the same time. Okay, so in the past 2 weeks, I have done the following. I had emailed with Linda Martin to reserve this room for the following dates today.
Oh,
February 24th and March 31st. We added the March 31st and removed the April 6th meeting because of a Easter holiday weekend and all of that. Instead of trying to squeeze in a meeting then, Our March 31st will count as the beginning of April meeting, okay? I also had emailed her the agenda for today's meeting. I corresponded with our board liaison with several emails with the general manager and board president in regards to making sure the correct records are in the county depository and up to date on the OPA website. And I attended yesterday on Teams the Ocean Pines Association training for committee chairs by Josh Davis. He held it really only lasted about 20 minutes, but it was talking about the new process. And just to catch everybody up to speed, we are to contact, it's Michelle Ross now, not necessarily Linda Martin. I'm sure Linda would help us if Michelle's out or whatever, but to contact her and CC our board liaison whenever we request to reserve this room for a meeting or for a Teams link. Okay. Committees, what came out of that, and that training was recorded and is posted on the website under committee tab somewhere. So anybody, because not all of the committee chairs were able to attend yesterday, so they did record it, you know, so that we can go back, and several of us had some questions about it. Me, I'm always the one who asks these kind of questions, but you know, about how to share, because one of the new policies is that if we have a virtual only type meeting, you know, where we can't do a hybrid, where some of us can be in person and we all have to use Teams, then supposedly someone with an Ocean Pines email, which would be our board liaison, is the one who has to start the meeting and do the recording, you know, and start letting us start the meeting. So and my question was, what happens if our board liaison is not going to be at a certain meeting? We know it, but we chose to still go ahead and meet, you know, to take care of some other business. Then we are to notify and let Michelle or Linda know so that one of them can start the meeting for us. And that scenario only applies for a completely virtual, you know, where we all have to meet virtually. We can do the screen sharing and all of that. I did not have an issue. They must have already logged me into it, so now I can tap into the internet here without, because that was my issue last 2 weeks ago. Is there's no public Wi-Fi here, so that for me to be able to share our documents up on the screen, I needed to log in to that. I think the training went well. There were some questions brought up about that the board needs to make some decisions on who can record meetings. Are committees required to do it? Not everybody does. We are one of the very few committees that has always historically recorded all of our meetings. And I commented on that saying we discuss a lot, and even for us, sometimes it helps to go back and rewatch the video from that meeting to say, oh, you know, this is what we discussed and stuff like that. So I would hope and recommend that the board would not make it a no recording policy for all committees, that they would still leave it up to us as committees individually. Okay. So then my next task will be to attend the next directors meeting, which is on February 18th. And that's a bit about it for my portion of the report. Now we'd like to give the board liaison an opportunity to give any kind of report that you would like to give us at this point.
Okay, Laura is correct. There have been several emails back and forth about sort of what we discussed this, I think, briefly last month. The book of resolutions as well, and M06.
M08
8.
manuals.
No. the elections.
Oh, six.
Six, right. Which had been approved by the board last summer, but had not gotten into the book of resolutions, and the county repository as well. And so I believe there were several emails, and I think actually Doug and I spoke over the phone a little bit about this as well. Here's where we are. N06, as amended last summer, has now been signed off on. And I believe if it is not yet, it will be included in the book of resolutions. I am told that the resolutions as they appear online on our website and the hard copy of the book of resolutions, the actual book itself, should be identical. They should, in other words, you can refer to either one, and that should be the way it works. As to the county repository, I don't remember if we covered this. Jeremy Tucker, who's our counsel, had said that the items that he needs to sign off on and deposit, that is all done. That part is all finished. The other, whatever other parts have to be filed, should be in the repository. The suggestion from Doug is that it would be worthwhile, if the committee was so interested, to delegate, either go by as a group or they'll make a subcommittee and take a road trip down to Snow Hill to view the repository and see what is in there, find out if there's anything missing, take an inventory, whatever needs to be done should be done. Now that's a little bit different, I believe I'm right about this, a little bit different than the land records filings. But I would assume you probably could get a look at both, but because I don't think the bylaws and our resolution, well, I'm not sure about that. I don't know the resolutions. The bylaws, I'm not sure about, would be in the land records. But I believe there's two separate, one is a homeowners association repository. The other is the land records office. I admit I don't have a complete knowledge of this, but the suggestion is that if the committee is, it would be worthwhile for the committee to pursue this and see what is there and go, and if there's a gap we need to know about, if it's up to date, we're fine, and proceed from there.
So my question is, does that fall under the description of our task as a committee, that we have permission to go and look? Are these, and I'm like Steve, I'm not totally all up on, the policies and procedures on who has access to those records. Or is it public domain so that anybody can go in and check or whatever? We're a committee, not one of the directors.
What I would say to you is this: the suggestion to go check on it was given to me by Doug, and Doug said he did that when he was, I can't remember if he said he was on or chair, one or the other, of this committee. I don't believe there's any authority that exists anywhere for anyone to go check the repository of documents. In other words, there's no,
Or restriction.
if there's a restriction, it's down in the office at Snow Hill. There is no grant of authority under our governing documents for anyone to go and check or review or take an inventory or whatever term you want to use. So I'll carry it a step further. My assumption would be, and that's all it is, an assumption, they don't get very many visitors. So, if someone wanted to call just to see, maybe make an appointment, that's fine. But as best as I can tell, if anyone would be the source of identifying a particular problem with the documents on file, it would be this committee. But that's where we're at.
Or could I make a comment?
we're gonna suspend, anyone opposed to suspending Robert's
Please
rules for
suspend
the
them.
remainder of our meetings, or then our Beth Jones can speak, unless we need to vote on something, and then we'll reinstate it.
I just want to speak from my experience with the HOA depository. I've been there maybe 3 times, and none of the 3 times were in a capacity involving Ocean Pines. 2 times I was there in capacity of a former position on the park board of directors. That's back in 2008. And another time I was there, not necessarily for the HOA depository, but I was there in maybe 2010, 2011. Again, those were many years ago. Initially, we had to convince somebody, like another individual and I on the park board of directors, 2007, 2006, had to convince somebody, yeah, you do have an HOA depository here, or you're supposed to have one. This is in the county clerk's office.
Right.
And I'm not being derogatory toward anybody, I'm just relating experience. Right? And finally, after a few minutes of discussion and searching for perhaps, yes, there is a box of documents for, in this case, it was the park documents for HOA depository, and we went through that was part of the transition of the park from a developer controlled to a local member of the park, an HOA control. And we were going through to make sure we had complied with what was required. And we stopped there and said, anybody who goes down there to look what's in there should look in the HOA Act, and there's, you see what has to be there. And you need to find out whether you have what's supposed to be there, and then decide what you have maybe should go in there. So there's 2 different things there. There are required things that must be in there in the HOA Act, and then you got to decide, do you need to put other things in. At any rate, the HOA depository 15 years ago was nothing more than a box of documents for your HOA. As far as land records is concerned, you will go down there and do a land records search. You're going to do the same thing as you can do online in your computer at home.
Right.
You have an access, you can access the Maryland land records, and you can go in by name, corporate name, individual name, various other things, and do a land records search. The same thing you'll do at the, again, 15 years ago, as you'll do at the clerk's office. They'll give you access to a row of terminals, and you start there, as if more or less the same as if you were sitting at your home with your computer, working on your own computer. I'm not sure why I know why I started. I know how to have the discussion, other than to say that, yeah, you can, nobody, there's no, or was not, no gatekeeper there that says, well, you don't have authorization to see this.
Because I think that was my question, is like, are
Again,
we authorized?
back in the day, anybody can go in there.
Right.
Now, whether the authority regarding doing something for the association is a very different story. But as far as it was when I did this, anybody can come in. And I'm from such and such an association, and I want to see those records. They may certainly ask you that. And again, as far as looking at land records, you're not going to do anything different there than you can do from your own computer. Right. Anyhow, I'm just trying to give some background.
My question would be, I was looking at B09, which we're working on now, which is record retention. So I went to the Maryland Homeowners Association file, and I didn't want to read all 100 pages in there, but there are 3 areas in there that could relate to file retention. One is, it says meeting of the elected governing body of the homeowners association. I have them marked here. And then the other is meeting a homeowners association and governing documents. And then the final one is book of records. Well, 2 of them don't address what has to be retained or what hasn't been retained. But if you look at 11B 106.1, that talks about the depository, and it talks about all the minutes of every meeting being retained in the depository. And it also implies, and I'm not an attorney, that any homeowner has the right to see what's in there at any time they want. So, and that gets back, I mean, we talk about later when we get to the retention policy where there may be a conflict, and I'm not an attorney. We should really get the lawyers to look at it and tell us what legally has to be there. Because it's never going to be a problem until somebody takes you to court.
Mhm.
Then it becomes a problem. Because the judge is going to, if you say it's not in the depository, and that's what there's, you could have a problem.
Yeah,
It gives you an out.
yeah, and we can cover that later, but my suggestion would be, as to the workability of getting down there and all that, it would be worthwhile, however you decide to proceed, somebody should call the clerk's office and say, we'd like to be able to review our files in the repository. Can we let you know that we're coming on Wednesday, March the 3rd or whatever? We expect to get there around 10 o'clock. Will that pose a problem for you? And just leave it at that. I think you're right. I mean, that would be consistent with the way the statute is written.
Right.
The idea is that any resident has, with some limitations, has wide latitude to review the records and the documents of the association. So, I mean, that would just be my suggestion. But I mean, that would be a way to proceed.
I can send out.
You look at the attachments with it.
Later and decide if anybody is interested in.
I'll be more than happy to
do
go
that,
along down or
or,
go down
you
or
know.
drive people down.
So we can
I
work
don't have
on
a
that
van.
offline.
Accommodate
Me
people.
too.
You too? Is that what you said, Augie?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we can take more than one car.
And
It's not that far.
if I may just add one other thing,
Uh-huh.
as to resolution M02, which is the amenities policy or amenity policies, which is on here as, I think, sort of unfinished business. The board is sort of quietly looking at a different way to skin the cat, if you will. And I would just suggest that at the moment that can go on the back burner. The assumption is that there will actually be a manual prepared by staff relating to policy relating to the amenities. And then we probably will have to, I'm guessing, amend M02 to reflect that there is a manual, how the manual is supposed to be dealt with, a variety of other issues, but and it's likely to come up for discussion at the March board meeting, maybe April. And then I would assume at that point, we'll get a better idea of how the committee is meant to amend and change M02. So for now, I would just say it's on the tick list, but it's further down.
Because I went on the internet to look because Doug said he was going to post his position on the internet.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find anything posted by Doug. I found the original one that was submitted to the board that's being worked on. But,
Right.
So you're right. If we put it on the back burner till the board decides what they want us to do, it makes more sense.
So, anyway, I'm done.
All right, thank you.
That'll save some time at this meeting.
What I did on the agenda, just, and really kind of for me to keep track of everything is, at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, if you look down underneath where I have adjournment, I still left the ones, even though Keith, you've got them on your tracker, that we had gone through from the January 21st directors meeting and updated all of these ones that had their first reading. Keeping it visible to me like this is just a reminder so that when we can see something come up for a second reading, then we can take it and make sure we've got it documented, and everything. So really it's more of a visual and a reminder for me because I am never going to remember all of these little things. And I don't want 3 months to go by and we go, oh, wait a minute, something should have had an easy second read and it didn't make it to the agenda for a director's meeting. You know what I mean? I think that'll help us work with our liaison to make sure that we're not letting something fall through the cracks and like that has happened in the past.
So I agree with you that those kinds of things we need to keep track of, but formally, that's what we're supposed to be doing here.
Right.
So what I would say is that if when you keep notes in the meeting
Mhm.
and then I send this out
Right.
and you don't see it on here, you kick this back to me
Okay.
and say, these, you didn't get this, you didn't get that.
Right.
And then I go back and I annotate this
Okay.
because formally, this is what we're required
Right.
to record those kinds of actions that you're talking about. So
Right.
you just have to keep me honest.
Yeah.
I
Well, like I said, my brain doesn't compute, remember.
I appreciate-
Memorization
No.
skills.
I appreciate all this. Is
Yeah.
all really good. Everybody's been keeping really good notes and then sharing them afterwards.
Right,
So
yes,
I just got to make sure that I don't miss something.
we're all on the right.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, but the one thing you're doing that I wasn't that is better is expanding the report to show the history. So it shows over and over again where things were sent out and not reported.
Why did
So
you
that-
did you remove older stuff?
I used to remove the older, but it's
I
keep
wondered
it, keep
about-
it.
Yeah, I wondered
That's-
about
I
that.
kept it so the report wouldn't get too long, but the more I look at it, it provides a good audit trail right there. I used to have to go back to look at the prior ones where I deleted it to see what somebody said. So why not just keep them there? And then when they're clear, you clear it back out and it goes to 2 lines. I think
Yeah,
it's a
that's-
better way. You're
for-
doing it better.
That's what I was, at least for me, I wanted to keep it for now.
Right.
Until I get some better level of historical precedence on something. So like Jim carries a lot of this around in his head.
I know. That was the difference with Jim.
But now that we don't have Jim all the time,
Right.
I just wanted to keep track of more of this stuff, so we could refer back to remember what we did, and what we didn't do.
I agree, because what you're doing is really good. And now what you've done that I had just started is all of them highlighted in pink. At a quick glance, you can look at it and see everything that's past due.
Yeah.
It gives you real quick.
But please, don't anybody hesitate, if you look at this and it says something other than what you thought we talked about, send me an email or to the group or whatever and say, this section, whatever, and I'll go back and I'll correct it. It's very easy for me to update this.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I saw, because I read it wrong, was where it was referring to our committee. And I thought it was.
I should have probably hyphenated it. That's probably the
That was my bad,
that
but
it's typically in the past.
anyway, it looks good, so.
Okay, so the first thing I had under, and again, you all have to just kind of work with me on what's called unfinished business or updates and new business. And because sometimes I feel like they can fit in both categories. So the next thing I have is the B01. We were, this is the one, let me sit down. B01. To where I have the red line up on there. We were told to unstrike.
The
I believe,
bylaws.
Right? This is the
Right.
one that we were unstriking the sentence before the red down.
Right.
And just leaving the red.
Leaving the
So
red
that
is the
has
addition.
been updated. And then I guess we just have to do the official, sign.
Well,
No, you gotta take it back.
The committee needs to vote on the new version of D01 that you just described.
Okay.
Committee approves it, then I need to bring it back to the board. I will endeavor to do so for the February board meeting. I told Linda already that, she called for everything to be in on
Right.
today. I can get it to her on Monday, because apparently I need another blank board form, which I'm not sure I have in my library, so I have to.
On your tiny desk,
Huh?
on your tiny desk.
Yeah, on my tiny desk and my very frustrating Ocean Pines provided laptop.
We could give you an old coffee table or something if that would help.
So do we have?
Well,
further
before we
discussion
vote
this?
on
Yeah.
that, I have another question about this document, right? Because
Okay.
if there's anything else in here, while we have it open, we should address it, right?
Right.
And I asked Jim about this earlier. And maybe this is just for my education, but If you scroll down, Laura, to the attachment,
Oh, okay, the attachment we put to it way back. Okay.
there you go, right there.
Keep going? or-
No, right there, that's
which
fine.
part?
And if you look under application, paragraph A and B, and unless I'm reading this wrong, this seems to me to indicate that these resolutions are supposed to be reviewed annually, as opposed to biannually, which is what we've been tracking to.
Right.
So now, am I not reading this right, or is that what this says? And if there was some decision in the past to change it to biannual, that this then needs to be updated?
Well. Between this original report that you have there was put together by Doug Parks, given to Marty Clark.
Mhm.
And then Marty was chair before Jim took it over. So it's been moved, changed, the form's been expanded.
Oh, you're talking about this?
Yeah, I'm talking about this because that defines how often it should be reviewed, how often we were reviewing it, which may not be consistent with this attachment. So the question I have, and I would agree with you, the board, almost every board resolution should be reviewed annually because those are the important resolutions, unless the board wants to do it differently. So those are normally scheduled for the annual review. The ones that are semi-annual are some that are considered less important. But you're right, because you mentioned that the committee every year has to review what they're doing. As part of that review should automatically include, are we satisfied with our resolution? If we are, just, it's done. If
Well,
they're
that's
not,
that's what paragraph A says.
Yeah.
It says that as part of your
Okay.
year-end
Right.
report,
Right.
you should be reporting on what
Right.
if you think the
So-
resolutions are okay or not, or maybe
Right.
you need updating.
yeah, but
I remember, and I probably have it in my bag in one of my piles of papers. I can't remember the format that we submit and answer the annual report in, if that's one of the questions on there. You know, have you looked at your resolution? Let me see if I
It's a good question.
when we put this attachment together for the board approval, which it was approved and added here, I think we missed it because it basically said annually, and we didn't say biannual, the option of annual or biannual.
Can I just make an observation at the risk of being a little too pedantic? 1A seems to me to tell all committees to review their assigned resolutions once a year.
Right.
And then if there is a need for a change, that's discretionary on the part of the committee.
Right, correct.
So I don't know that I understand the point, but I don't know that you have a conflict here. In other words, the governance document, which is a 2-year review process, is sufficient as it exists because it doesn't mandate that you have to change the resolutions every year.
No.
It simply says that in your report, if you see a need for a change, it's discretionary on the part of the committee to recommend a change. So that would be the way I would read it. I would also point out that it avoids having to go through the process of amending the attachment or changing what appears to be the policy that we are following as an association anyway. But
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. The only thing that I see is that, for example, we got a bunch of pinks on here, right?
Right.
And some of them are well over 2 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what happens is that the chair gets put into a position of having to go to the other chair and say, have you done this? Have you reviewed this? Are you okay?
Right.
And theoretically, the other chair could say, yeah, I do it every year.
Mhm.
What are you talking about?
Right.
If I didn't come to you and complain about it, it's good. Why are you asking me about this?
Right.
Okay.
No news is.
Now-
So that's the only thing that I see might be
Right.
I don't know.
I did pull up, I know I don't have it up there, but I have
Okay.
it on here in front of me. So
Good.
on the annual report, there is no question. The section 1 is who are your committee members and their term statuses. Section 2 is section of major activities during reporting the period. Section 3 is problems encountered and assistance required. 4 is request for items to be included in the OPA budget. 5 is recommendations for board action, and 6 is recommendations for committee work. So nowhere does it officially say this committee reviewed
Resolutions requiring
resolution,
change, modification, whatever.
Go back to our resolution and go back to the attachment on the last page and go down to item 4.
Oh,
That's part of our resolution.
okay.
And that was approved by the board when it was put on there. And that gives you the option of what happens other than with the board. We do need the board to tell us they've agreed to it or they disagree or want to change it. But for all the committees, if the committee doesn't respond within a reasonable amount of time, we're going to consider it to have been reviewed and we'll note it on the file and move it out to the next review period. We've told them, we've asked them, they haven't replied.
Which we've done in the past, as I recall.
Right, it's already published.
Yeah.
So we do have the option. So the only question is, what, from a procedure standpoint, does this committee want to go back to another committee and tell them every year to look at it? Or do we want to do it on our schedule and schedule it for 2 years? I think it's optional and administrative.
Or do we recommend a change to that format?
Mhm.
To add a line item that says resolutions requiring change, none, right? And so then once a year, we would get,
And then
you would
update
get
it.
potentially a
Right.
report from maybe Linda or somebody that collects all of those
Right,
and says everybody's reporting they're good. And then I go in and update all the dates.
Yeah.
right.
That's another option, but I don't think you need to change anything. It's an administrative way of doing it,
I
but you're
think-
right. If you could get them to add that, that's the board's
Yeah.
decision.
To that report
To the-
format.
to the
Yeah, to their
format of
report.
the annual. Yeah, because in a way, that is holding us all
Sure.
accountable to at least
Right.
acknowledge it.
Yeah,
You
that they've
know,
looked at
and-
it and they're satisfied
Well,
with
they're tasked right here with doing it.
Right.
So it's a requirement and
And like you said, if they don't need to update anything, it's a quick, no changes
not
needed.
applicable.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
all they have
No
to do
changes
is, if they want-
recommended at this time.
Yeah.
if they're satisfied, they're satisfied. If not, they ask their board liaison to present to the board what they want to change.
But by
And they can do that
having-
anytime.
By having them acknowledge it into the report, at least lets us know somebody has thought about it versus are they just ghosting us and not answering
It
and,
becomes part of the record.
and it's been in some
Mhm.
file and nobody's paid attention
makes-
to it. And,
Makes it easy
you know,
if it's part of the
so, yeah.
review process.
Okay.
So I don't know,
Well, so
We got to make.
so
a
going back
request
to
our
this-
board
for
liaison.
the next annual
What
report,
what
is that
you
what
would
we
have to
recommend?
do, it seems to me, is the committee would have to prepare a charging document for the board to consider.
Okay,
Referencing the appropriate resolution that needs to be amended that with a form that we're talking about is covered.
Right.
the annual report.
Right.
And including that, the requirement that, because I think staff, either the board or the staff receives the annual reports, I'm not sure who, but whoever receives the annual reports would be required to inform the bylaws committee of any committee requesting a change
Right.
and leave it at that.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So that's what you would need to do.
Yeah. So Keith, you're probably in the best position to write the charging
I can do
document.
that. Yeah, I can draft up a
Yeah,
charging
'cause you-
document.
It's,
Send
you're
it back
you're
to
the
the-
one that's responsible.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Anybody off the top of their head know which resolution that is? It's got the annual report requirement in it.
say it again.
Do you know which resolution?
Jim,
that
do you
is?
remember?
C01.
C01. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank-
Well,
Thanks,
give me another 10 years.
thanks,
then I'll
member of the
have
public.
that down pat.
I tell you what,
You all have
Jim and I
to
are about-
attend meetings for
Jim and I
us.
are about the
Just
same
via
age, and his
our,
memory retention is better than
our
mine.
internet, our
God bless.
research documents are updated.
I can't believe you recalled, Jim.
I know.
Now, because we're getting older.
I am too.
Okay. Okay, so now back to B01 then. So
Okay,
that's not an issue for B01.
right.
So really all we're talking about now is
It's that we just
The red lines.
updated it.
Is get it to our
And then,
Board liaison.
right. Okay,
Are you gonna be at the the March meeting?
I am
You're gonna
hoping,
be out of
assuming
town.
everything works correctly, I will be there remotely,
Oh,
because I will be out of town.
okay, that's what I thought you were gonna be out of town.
So, well, we can go through this, but my initial plan would be as to B01 and M08, I would be prepared to raise those at the February board meeting. The others, and I think there's like 4 more. I just exchanged an email with Linda about this.
Yeah.
F03, B07, M05. I'm missing one somewhere. I would be inclined to hold those off until March.
Sure.
Because there's going to be some other matters, I think, that'll be up in the February board meeting, which could, I think, take up a lot of time.
Right.
So that's sort of where I'm at this point. If I see an opening and I can get them done pretty quick, I would be inclined to do it, but discretion being the better part of valor, I'm inclined to wait until March.
I think at least you got a process going that you're following up with the board, so we know they're on the agenda now.
Yeah.
For a
this is-
period of time, some of them are getting there.
Well, anyway, yeah.
all right.
So I move we approve B01 with the red lines as presented.
A second.
Oh, wait a minute, we have to reinstate Robert's rules.
Oh.
And
Why?
then, go
Why?
ahead,
We can just tell him he can't vote.
okay, I'm sorry, I can't vote.
Okay.
Okay,
make
so
it
the
easy.
motion on the floor is
To approve B01 red lines
B01.
as presented.
Yeah. And then you seconded.
I
right?
second it.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor of approving B01 as presented, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
You know, I don't quite understand Robert's rules, but if we suspend them and a member's there, somebody like Jim that's really knowledgeable, he knows he's not going to vote anyway, so why do you need to
Yeah,
reinstate and keep?
I would think you could probably get by moving to suspend Robert's rules for the purposes of allowing
Right.
Jim to participate in discussion, but he cannot be counted for a quorum or for the purposes of voting.
Right.
That would be sufficient. You
Right.
don't have to keep going back.
Yeah, that gets to be, that's all I was trying to avoid, because whoever's keeping the minutes for the meeting, suspend, reinstate, you don't need that.
Okay, so moving on, the next thing was the B03, red line has been located.
Which one's that now?
This is where
This has been created by
those
legal counsel, Karen
mandates
Tucker, and
will
not
be-
our,
you will record, you will, the
B0.
things that I left off of
Would be where?
would be in this. Meetings of members.
Oh,
That's the one you're putting on hold, right?
um,
so you tell me what we need to do with this one.
hold on, let me find.
Yeah, that's the one for,
Oh, this is.
that's the one you want to hold until the board has time
Right,
to.
if I may, the discussion that has taken place on this from the last meeting was, this was considered during the summer, prior to the last election, so I was not on the board at that time. But the issue was virtual participants at meetings. Now, this is separate and distinct from virtual participation at board meetings. So the issue that was raised in our last meeting was, the discussion was that it allows for virtual participation for the purposes of counting the quorum and for voting. It does not, at the time, did not say anything about allowing for virtual attendees to participate during the annual meeting. The other issue, which was never quite clearly decided, I think is the best way to put it, last summer, was whether or not we had the technical capability to ensure that only members of the association could participate virtually And participation would include counting for a quorum, voting, and participating in discussion. And so my recollection, and I think what I took a crack at writing here, was to address the general manager is certifying or informing that they have the ability to have members participate virtually, but only members, and then also making it clear that they would be allowed to participate virtually at the meeting. That's my recollection of where we are.
Okay.
Okay, so are we here continuing a discussion on this ourselves, or are we waiting for the directors to finish their discussion and then we'll discuss? Does that make sense?
Yeah, do we have any input until we know what the board wants to do?
All right.
Well, according to my notes, the task was, and Steve just basically reiterated that he was going to draft up the red lines of this based on his understanding of what the board was interested in. We would review that at this meeting, and unless we had any changes to it, Steve would then take that back to the board representing our.
So we do want to look at the red line now.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I'm just checking there to make sure. Okay, so the red line, let's see if I can get it.
Did I send you a revised copy?
This
Is this the one that I have up?
She emailed out, yeah. It looks, the one that you emailed out looks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is this the one?
yeah, I think that's your latest.
Okay, yeah, embarrassing to admit, I do not have that version in front of me. Okay, I see what I did. Okay.
Or is there a PDF that you want me to pull up? Which one is this? 203. This is the only one I only have.
Right, and what I don't have in front of me, small point, not important, what I didn't have in front of me was I. I don't have that in front of me. So that's what I just forgot to print it off. That's all.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So
But this does up here represents your
that looks like my,
most recent version.
yeah.
Alright. So, do we want to start at the top then? Or as you look over this, is there something that you see you have a question about? Or any typos or anything that we need to fix on there?
Well, I mean, formatting wise, depending on how this prints out, because I'm looking at it on the screen, so it may not be accurate, but on the screen, it shows like there's extra spaces under paragraph, subparagraph D4, but that, formatting wise, that's the only thing I'm seeing right now. So I see in here that the paragraph that's up there is where you put the requirement that the general manager has to stipulate that the ability to vet the people, he's got to report to the board, yes, we have the ability to vet the participants.
Right.
So I guess what that means is if the general if the board is scheduling a meeting and they want it to be hybrid, the general manager says, we don't have that figured out yet. We don't have the technology, or we don't have that quite in place yet. Then essentially, based on this, that would mean that the board then couldn't have that virtual meeting, right?
The hybrid. Yeah.
The hybrid, right.
Well, the virtual hybrid. That would be correct. I mean, the
Question.
following requirements must be met.
Yeah, this is the annual meeting.
Yeah.
Question I have, it's just clarification on C down there. where it says the inability of a member to join due to technical difficulties.
Right.
It's implied that if he can't join, he can't count as a quorum. And if that was the difference of one person, you don't have a quorum, right?
The ability of a member to join.
To invalidate the meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my question.
I see.
I mean, if I tried to call in and say I want to attend, but I can't get through, you can't count me if I can't participate, right?
That would be
Virtually.
correct.
So
Yeah,
it
if
does
you can't
have to,
get- If you can't get in, you can't count.
you can't count. Okay.
It's like you're not there.
But I think, were you trying to make the point that if a member says, hey, I couldn't get into the meeting,
Right.
let's just say we don't even know why. It's just a person says afterwards, I was not able to get into this meeting, and so therefore you denied me access. Right? So then it's gonna be up to somebody to figure out why couldn't they get in? You know, it could have simply been on their side technologically that they couldn't get in.
Their internet went out.
Their internet,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Right, I see where you're going with this.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think let me backtrack again. I did not change C in the version you have in front of you. So that's the version that was in the proposed resolution back in the summer. My reading of what you're describing is precisely that if an individual cannot get in, even though they want to, for whatever reason, that does not invalidate the actions of the meeting itself. In other words, the meeting itself is still legit. I would assume that since they can't get in, they can't count as a quorum anyway.
Right.
You would still have, I mean, you can't transact any business if you have a quorum.
Right.
So my reading of that would be, you may have wanted to get in, you couldn't get in, but if the quorum was present, the meeting could still proceed.
I'm just wondering if maybe we need to add some lawyer weasel words in here in a separate paragraph that says something essentially to the fact that if a member chooses to participate virtually and is unable to due to technological
Whatever
issues,
reason.
beyond the control of the association, that the member assumes that risk. In other words, if I showed up at the door
Yeah.
with my membership card and I said, I'm here to vote, and for some reason they didn't let me in,
Right.
I would
That's
have a valid complaint,
Right.
right? But if I choose to go virtually and then I can't connect because my phone's not working or my internet's down,
Yeah, media comes down.
that's not the association's fault, right?
Right.
Do we need to put something in there like that, some sort of disclaimer? That members who choose to participate virtually assume the risk of any technological difficulties associated with that?
Well,
You'd only have.
well, the problem is then you then have to ascribe to where the technical difficulty originated, and I don't know how you do that.
Well, we would just say any.
Well, right.
I mean, in my mind, subsection C does exactly that without getting into like who's at fault or what the sort of issue is. It just says if the virtual participation doesn't work, the meeting goes forward.
Right, and again, that assumes the presence of a quorum.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Because
You can-
that's you have to clear a quorum first. That's the first.
No, I'm with you on that.
Right.
To me, it seems like two separate issues. One issue is the meeting still valid and then all actions taken by the meeting valid? And the other one is, I was denied access to, as an association member of a meeting. And we had a member stand up at a meeting, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and made a public complaint that he was denied access to a meeting. You remember that? Now, it turned out to be for a reason that was, somebody recommended some people use this conference room. They were calling in virtually, and then that conference room wasn't able to connect for some reason. So the people that were in that conference room didn't get to participate. This person's perception of it was that he was required to use that conference room. And because he was required to use it, he was not allowed to participate in the meeting. Now, there was really no action for the association to take because there was no deliberate attempt to deny him access to the meeting. And the meeting was not invalidated because of his complaint. that's why, to me, it just seems like two separate issues. One's the validity of the meeting, and one is association members' rights to participate in meetings.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, part of the problem, it seems to me, is if a member can't get in and they want to participate virtually, you then have two questions on that side, which is the fault with the ISP in that they go down, they don't provide an adequate connection, they're too slow, or as would be often in my case, the technical inability of the member to get into the meeting in the first place. And so I understand the point, but I'm inclined to think Augie's explanation is probably the best, which is, for whatever reason, if you don't get in, it doesn't invalidate the meeting. And that's really as far as I think the resolution has to go.
So now I'm starting to look at it a little bit differently now. I think that's right. I think for the resolution, that's the language that needs to be in there. And maybe the solution to what I'm talking about is when notices go out, you know, how we have the
There's a
emails.
disclaimer on there.
Yeah, that on there, there's a link, you know, because there's going to be a link provided,
They always, yeah.
right? And maybe as part of our standardized process of doing this, that link includes a little note that says, you know, connection is not guaranteed, you know, due subject to, you know, services at home, something like that. Some kind of little FYI, if you choose to do this, it's on you kind of thing.
So,
What Ocean Pines is doing as an accommodation for people that can't physically attend the meeting, but because it's a regular meeting, they're trying to provide it. You assume all risks if you can't get in. It's your problem, not Ocean Pines, for whatever reason. The system could go down. Yeah, Jim.
You know, I looked at this is extracted in large part from the HOA Act provision. And I haven't looked at that recently, but you may find what you're talking about, words to the effect of what you're talking about in that provision in the HOA Act. That if there's a problem getting in, it's not the association's problem.
Right. The way I look at
When
it.
you can't get in, it's not the association's problem. I'm not saying that little words. It's after you get in, and what is the other part is what you can do after you get in.
right.
That's the more
The
important part.
getting in part may be covered in so many words in the HOA Act.
Right,
I have that in back of my mind.
and this language does, someplace, I can't remember exactly where, but it does say that the association's responsibility is to provide the link to all members.
Which, if they've done that, then
Then you should be able to
Completely
click on it and get in. That's,
Right.
in theory, the way it should work.
Yeah. I would-
That's A little I.
Yeah,
where are you?
Where you at?
Tell me.
Up a little more. Saying that you have to have the equipment to permit anyone to participate virtually. A little I.
and a double I, a link or instructions on how to access should be included in the notice of the meeting. I think at that point, the association has done precisely what it's
Yeah.
supposed to do.
You've done everything you can do.
So I just have a clarification question on my part. When we are saying and I don't know if I can't tell if it's written here. How are we verifying that an online person is a member to participate in the annual meeting then to be able to count for quorum and all of that? When they're on virtually, you have two options. You can be like Augie, have your camera on so we can see a face, right? Or you can call in, which usually only pops up a phone number. We only mention here that the equipment must permit those in attendance to hear and be heard by all others participating in the meeting. I don't know if there's a spot that, do we need to clarify for an online, voting purposes? Do you need to be able to turn a camera on and verify who you are? you know, with that matches your address or whatever. I don't know all of what we would need, you know, and to me, that's up to the
Well, that's,
general
if I
manager,
can,
right?
that's what I'm sorry,
Double I.
AII on the screen, the
Mhm.
issue of the link or instructions on how to access it, and now AIII, which I referred to
Account.
before, but AII basically places that
Right.
on the general manager, that the equipment or system is able to ensure that only qualified members of Ocean Pines may be counted toward a quorum to vote and to fully participate in the meeting. In
But the
your question
Yeah.
as to whether or not the camera has to be on and how they vote, I think, as I remember reading this before, ultimately how votes are taken and counted is down in D, small d. So it's not a question of whether or not you have to turn the camera on or not. It's for lack of a better term, sort of a separate procedure, I guess is the best way to describe it. You should not assume that the voting and the counting of votes would be instantaneous at the time of the meeting. At least that's the way I read, I think, the provisions in D.
Return of the ballot shall not be later than 24 hours.
Yeah, any matter requiring a vote of the association at the meeting may be set by the president for a vote.
Right.
And a ballot may be
somebody-
delivered to the notice of the meeting, and it goes on
Right.
all the way down to small
Because I get
Roman
that
IV.
I get that the general manager, 30 days prior to the annual meeting, will make sure that the roster lists all of those who are eligible to vote, but then you'll have to find out who all decides to show up for that meeting and then verify them, you know,
Right.
everybody can vote, but then you have to go back and look at, oh, well, okay, well, you know what, this person was online, they weren't on that approved list, so that vote doesn't count. Or,
Well, I mean, again, I'm sort of beyond my limited level of knowledge here, but my assumption would be that what's required here is that the general manager has found a way, for the purposes of the annual meeting, to have a current list of eligible members who can count towards a quorum, participate, and vote.
right,
And when they check in, there's a way to let those people in and keep out those who are not on the list out. And that would be what would be required. How the voting would take place seems, as I read this, seems to be sort of a separate consideration, but I don't think you need to assume that if the president at the meeting were to say, all those in favor, please say aye, and everybody has to flip on their camera and their microphone and say aye, and the noise blows everybody out of the room. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But there's sort of, as I read that, sort of two separate considerations. I mean, I could be wrong.
Well, I haven't read, I tried to look at it here to cross-reference, but clearly in the Homeowners Act, it defines it. So without reading what's in there, you got to be in compliance with the Maryland Homeowners Act, which this refers back to the right section, but I didn't print out the detail, page 23 or whatever. Page 23 and probably goes into page 24.
Oh, you're talking about section 11B,
Yeah.
3.6.
There's some definition in there that has to be,
Okay.
you know, we
So-
got to comply with Maryland homeowners.
Are we required to allow public participation? In other words, non-association members at our meetings?
No,
No,
they're not required.
in fact, I don't think.
It's in the
we-
bylaws. I mean, if you read the Homeowners Act,
So when we say that meetings have to be open to the public, what we really mean is they have to be open to the members.
to all of our
so
residents.
members and those people that have legal reasons,
Or, yeah, some,
Right.
Yeah.
maybe
Mhm.
I'm trying to
like
see
the
if,
press.
I'm not sure. What I can tell you is the press can be kept out of a board meeting by a vote of a majority of the board members voting to keep the press out, or an individual member of the press out.
So just with
As
related
to
to
the
what,
annual meeting, I haven't looked at all the provisions, so I don't. I
so
can't-
if there's not a requirement that we let non-association or non, I don't know, people who have some legal reason that they can be there,
Right.
just general public, if there's not a requirement for the general public to participate, then I'm okay, because with that process you described, seems like that would do it, right? You only let in people who are vetted. So that means if they get into the meeting, they've been vetted, and by default, they can count towards quorum.
That would be, that's the way I would read it.
So what's my second?
I think if you read the homeowners act,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back.
it defines it, because there was a debate when they didn't allow people that weren't members of one of the board meetings. And then it wound up on the website.
You mean if
At your,
November?
yeah, the November.
The November meeting,
And it was challenged then, and it's in the homeowners act that the board has the right to limit attendance to owners and
Association.
association, people that are holding legal reasons to attend.
So what was the other thing I was gonna ask?
off the beaten path a little bit, but at the November board meeting, the requirement was, as I recall, that there would be no virtual participation, but any person who wanted to be there had to have
Owners.
their card, their Ocean Pines card to get in.
Right.
And that created some level of controversy, and even one might call it apoplexy about it, but that's what happened.
I thought, am I getting a dizzy here or something?
I hit the button here. I went,
So I guess, for
Sure,
me,
to
The
start with.
renovations are great.
to be comfortable saying, yeah, I'm good to go with this, I wish I had known that this wording came from there, and I would have reviewed it before the meeting today.
I didn't.
Is this in a rush?
No, again, my intent is not to raise this at the February board meeting.
Okay.
So we
And
could-
based
we
upon,
could Still.
I would say this, based upon, as to B03, what I would be inclined to do would be to, if the committee approves it, circulate it to the board members maybe a couple of weeks ahead of the March board meeting, even though I'd be prepared to put it on the agenda for the March board meeting so they can spend a little time looking it over. Because I think it's fair to say, and Jim, you might have better recollection than I do, that when this was considered last summer, there was a lot of fuss and feathers about the whole thing, and it was very rushed. And it got linked in, rightly or wrongly, with the issue of online voting, which was in a separate resolution. And, there's an open question as to whether or not, I guess, I wasn't there, but the last annual meeting really did follow the appropriate provisions of the resolution, because were virtual members allowed in? I wasn't there. I don't know.
I came in virtually and was not asked any identity
Right.
questions or anything else. I don't know whether that was because I logged in about 10 minutes before the meeting started,
Uh-huh.
and they had asked that you log in at least 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So were the people who logged in ahead of me somehow verified to be association members and counted to a quorum? And I just came in as an observer, wherever, member or not member,
Right.
picking up the link off of the Ocean Pines website, which is what I did. I think it's about the only way you could get in anyway.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And so I can't say. My recollection of the resolution consideration, and it never went anywhere at that point in time, was over the verification of a membership for quorum purposes.
Right.
That's right.
And frankly, that's why the language that I added as one double I, which is up there, or would be up there, should address that issue, because
Right.
it requires the GM to say, 30 days before the annual meeting, I've got something in place that lets me verify that only appropriate people can participate. That would be,
So are we meeting again before the next board meeting?
Our next
Yeah.
one is February 24th, and then we have March 10th.
This is a
And then the
special
next-
meeting.
The March directors meeting is the 18th of March.
Yeah.
So we technically have 2 meetings prior to the March,
so if you could finalize this
before you go,
on the next committee meeting,
24th.
which gives me more time to get it out to the board members.
Okay.
Right.
I think we
We
could
can
do that.
Yeah.
I think we could do that, and that gives a chance to go back and review the
I think we
HOA.
should go back and, we're not lawyers, but at least look at the
Yeah, and
homeowners
by
act
the
and
way,
make sure.
For what it's worth, as to, I don't think you need to say anywhere, that pursuant to Maryland Homeowners Act, blah, 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 blah. All of our governing documents have to follow the Maryland
Yeah.
Homeowners Act.
Mhm.
There's reference to it in here. That's what
Right.
caused me to look at it.
Right, because I think it's
It says only members present
Right.
are authorized to vote. So they
it's
refer
it's
to it.
almost definitional.
But everything that we do really is covered by
Has-
the Maryland.
has to be.
That's the top
Yeah.
level. So, yeah, I think we can do that. I was just.
I think
gonna-
we should be able to do that.
Yeah.
At the next
I was
meeting.
gonna mention, we got roughly 40 minutes left and we want to make sure we move so we get time to look at your document, Keith.
So now I'm gonna stop sharing on this one,
Okay,
so that
we'll
I can.
certainly move that to the next meeting and be ready.
Yeah. I've got in
You're
my
gonna be at our
case,
next meeting or you're gonna be on vacation?
No, I'm only gone for the weekend.
Oh, just that weekend?
I'm going down, off the beaten path. I'm going down to see the Cats play the Hurricanes at night in a football stadium next Saturday night. Okay,
Okay.
and my 2 sons and I are gonna drive over and do that. I'm just gone for the weekend. I'll be back.
Okay. Okay,
Barring a plane crash, I'll be back.
yeah.
Okay, so that technically covers the unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Which one did you want to do?
Well, your first one, records retention policy, and then you got further down, B09, those are the same thing.
Okay. So,
And
so you want me to
M0.
pull up the B09? What do you want on the screen?
Do you have this draft that I sent you?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
See if I can-
Resolution B09, record retention policy. It should say draft. I should have draft on a mark on it.
All
Yeah,
right, is that it? I got that out,
that's
right?
it. Yep.
Okay.
So last time I agreed to draft up something using the language out of this, remember this records retention policy that Steve gave us that basically captured
Mhm.
the board's notes and wishes. What I remember though, and maybe I got this wrong, is what I thought we discussed is that B09 would be a reflection of what do you do with this stuff when you get it? So what do you do with these videos? What do you do with these minute meetings? And so which is mostly what's in here. But then what else is in here is, for example, board meetings will be video recorded using technology, blah, blah, blah. Committee meetings will be made available to, that's policy about who's going to do it and do they have to do it.
Right.
My understanding was that would be in a different resolution. That B09 would just be, when this happens, here's what you're going to do with this stuff.
And for how long, right?
Is that accurate? Is that what you all remember?
That's what
Because-
I remember.
Oh, thank you. Oh, my goodness. Because Steve looked at this and said, wait a minute, stuff's missing.
Well, no, I just knew the list that was prepared attached to the charging document of the committee was longer than what was in the
Right.
resolution.
And so what I noticed,
That's all I noticed.
yeah, you're right. And so what I noticed as I was reading through this is that some of it was repetitive So in other words, the requirement for the board meeting video, let's say, was identical to the requirement for the committee meeting video, something, and if that was the case, I just combined the language. And so what I did was I only broke out under A and B what was different. If the requirement was the same, that requirement is embedded in paragraph 3 under policy. Does that make sense? Well, like in paragraph 3, it says, board of director and committee meeting member meeting recorded videos and their associated minute meetings shall be preserved on appropriate storage equipment on site at the Ocean Pine Association. That was identical on both lists, right? Or provided by a cloud service provider. And then the second one was any board of director or committee meeting recorded videos and their associated meeting minutes will be made available on the Ocean Pines Association public website. That was identical on both lists. So I just put those in paragraph 3, and then A and B is where the difference is between
The two types of meetings.
correct.
Okay.
I just thought it was easier to read that way.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is,
I like that structuring.
I think that's right. The only thing I would say is, I don't know offhand whether or not there is a policy requiring all committees to meet in a hybrid or meet solely in person or meet only virtually. And I don't know that there's a policy that says if you meet in any of those, that whatever video needs to be preserved. Because I will tell you, I think I mentioned it to you, Laura, that I'm liaison with the communications committee. They meet only virtually, but they do not save their videos. They rely strictly on their minutes. And it works for them. That's, I mean, I'm not saying that I just, so
you're right.
the way this is constructed, there's no mandate, which I think is appropriate, because I don't think we're in a position to mandate what should be done. It's up to the board. Board wants to mandate that all committee meetings have to be preserved for two months. Then that's what they will have to decide to do. But that's not here. I don't see a problem with that.
I'm trying to remember, we said last time which resolution we thought that was more appropriate for. Does anybody remember that?
I'm trying to remember
Where's
now.
those notes? I gotta look back at the minutes.
Because the thing, if you look at the Maryland Homeowners Act, it doesn't define committees that I can see and what their requirements are. It defines the association. And if you read that one, it's very clear that the minutes of all meetings have to be kept forever and are in the depository. It doesn't put any restrictions of when you can delete them.
Well, the minutes may have to be in the repository.
Right.
I think
It doesn't talk anything about the video meetings.
what this says is, and I'll defer to Jim on this one.
Yeah, Jim may have some
This
information.
is 5 years. That the minutes will be retained for 5 years, and the video could be retained. Video too. Yeah, video should be retained
For board meetings.
of the board meetings, not
Board
committee
meetings.
meetings. Now, one other thing that, and I think Jim made this point as well at the last meeting, was that there are some committees that are not advisory. They have specific tasks assigned to them. I think budget and finance is one, and elections is another. And
Search
potentially,
committee.
even search committee,
Right,
although,
Yeah.
whether or not they exist.
yeah.
Talk
But
about
anyway,
it.
yeah, I mean, so but I think from the way this came to us, because again, the background that was attached to the charging document talks about advisory committee meetings.
So
I don't know if
I remember now, I pulled out this is where I was making notes last time. And I remember that for the committee meetings or advisory meetings, we felt like who should have to do what should go in C01. Because that's where you lay out the general requirements of the committees and their meetings.
Right.
So if if there was gonna be a decision made that all advisory committee meetings had to record, but I don't know what you call the other meeting, the other committees, don't, that it was optional, then this would be where you would put that in C01.
Yeah, and that would be a board's call. Yeah, that's where it should be. And videos, I mean, they didn't exist up till COVID hit. So therefore, I mean, other than some of the board meetings. So therefore, are they really required to be retained for any period of time? The minutes of the meeting are different. They're defined.
Well, and again, for
The
what it's
video
worth,
supplements it, but so what?
this came up because there was a concern. I'm not quite sure where it began, but the way it came to me as for liaison purposes was, we cannot say, we don't have the capacity and we don't want to spend the money to save videos in perpetuity. That the minutes should be used as the basis for review of committee action dating back a number of years. The original idea was, the committee meetings would be kept on video for 1 month. And my point was, particularly for this committee, was that both the current chair and the former chair valued being able to go back to the video just to make sure the minutes were accurate. And so we, it was extended to 2 months. But the genesis of all this, particularly as it applies to videos, is we have some limits as to capacity and an unwillingness to spend more money to increase capacity. And so to the extent we're talking only about record retention, this would seem to accomplish the goal.
I think I'm fine with all of that. It came up during the training yesterday. There was a committee that was not fond of recording their videos, and that Josh had replied to that question is, are we required or whatever? I forget how exactly it was worded, but he was like, that is a board decision. So my thought though, since the board changes pretty much every year, right? Because we always have a couple new ones coming in and a couple coming off, right? Isn't that how, because we have elections every year.
Right.
So then can every board every year decide to change the number on how long we can retain something, or make the decision that this year no committees can record videos at all, and stuff like that. To me, that's really cumbersome and can be not detrimental is more of a harsher word.
Destabilizing.
Yes,
It's destabilizing.
Because I feel like we are very transparent here and we have so much stuff to go over. I would be kind of upset if we were told we can't record anything using Teams. Now, what I forgot to mention is they did say we can set up a Zoom link to have our own meetings. So if for some reason somebody's not available here to give us a Teams link or whatever, I have my own Zoom account. I can set us up a Zoom link.
And
we
record
can
it?
still record it, exactly, save the chat, all of that kind of stuff, and forward that to the association, to be posted online, just like they would a Teams video of our meetings, So I still think there's a little bit of stuff that they're all going to want to, fine tune in the policies and procedures. But I'm not opposed to doing that either.
So this kind of goes back to my previous question. I asked that one, I guess, about board meetings, but are committee meetings required to be open to the public? So if our meetings are required to be open to the public, then nobody should have a problem recording them. Because theoretically, anybody could come in there and sit in that chair over there, listen, comment, write a editorial in the
Does-
newspaper.
Let me ask the question
Right.
differently. Jim, can anybody attend or is it limited to members,
I'm gonna say it's limited to members, but they're
owners, property owners?
property owners or, I think that's.
So kind of like the
Yeah.
annual meeting then?
But somebody that's a renter that's happens to have an interest, we don't have to. I mean, there's
So
no
then,
reason not
I
to.
think that's an interesting point. Because let's say it is open to association people,
Right.
members or employees, whatever, but not to the general public,
Right.
right? Then I could see, I personally know some people who wouldn't want to be recorded and have that video stuck on the internet in all perpetuity.
Right.
Do you want me to pick up something for you?
In other words, instead of putting them on YouTube where anybody could get to them,
Right.
if they were in, like if there was a link in the association, like we all have accounts now. I've never used mine, I don't think, but if you go to the association homepage, there's a member login. We all have member
Right.
numbers.
I haven't actually, I don't even think I've even done the member login.
Anymore.
part.
I don't think I've
It's on
used
the
it, but
public
if you had
site.
to log in
Yeah,
to the association website with your member number,
right,
and then once you were logged in, you had a link where you could go look at all these videos,
right.
then I think we'd be back in the clear. But I think there could be a valid argument by some people that if it's just being posted on the internet in general for the world to see, some people might have a problem with that.
Well, there are some committees, prodding members of committees that don't want
Well,
to be
I'm pretty sure one of
recorded.
the.
You gotta
committees
respect
deals
that.
with
Well,
elections,
I mean,
and-
Art, for
But they
argument's
have
sake,
so much
will
problem.
avoid videotaping because they have individuals coming in with specific complaints or
Sure.
violations. I don't know if the procedure is that the committee videotapes. I don't know that someone coming in would have the ability to say, well, no, you can't videotape what I'm going to say. I mean, looking at board meetings, we have a period of public comment.
Right.
It's captured on video.
Mhm.
No one who makes a public comment has the right to say, no, turn off the camera because I just want to speak. So I don't think anyone has the veto authority unless the board grants it to them, which to the best of my knowledge, the board has not done.
So the reason I bring it up is I work part-time consulting for a major aerospace company. They do virtual meetings, like everybody else since COVID, they do a lot of virtual meetings.
Sure.
Just watch my card.
And about 3 months ago, they called a halt to all virtual meetings and sent out this big notice that everybody had to read and click off on, that you had to consent to being recorded.
Mhm.
And that if you did not consent to being recorded, you could not attend the meeting. And now this is a big aerospace company, right? They only do that if they're afraid there's gonna be some sort of legal action,
Right.
Right.
right?
That's
So that's why I wonder, is there,
Well, Augie when Augie logged in, he saw a notification, because I did when I logged into that one, recording in progress, and you have to, kind of.
you don't have to
accept-
close, you don't
Yeah.
have to close that little banner can stay open.
Right,
You only close it out of convenience for you because it's taking up part of the screen.
right.
But it's not like you gotta click on it to consent to it. All I'm saying is I wonder if even some committee members could have a legal argument
Mhm.
that they have a right not to be recorded.
Right.
Well,
And I think that's why I added at the beginning of this meeting, just the formality of saying, are we all okay with recording this meeting? Because if not, then we could just say, okay, we're gonna stop the recording and we won't record this one if for some reason somebody was really against being recorded,
well,
one of our committees, but it should be a committee decision, not, in my view, personally, like coming from the board saying no committees can record. You know what I mean? That wouldn't it fall to the individual?
Well, but even
It's-
you having the option to record or not to record, that option would still come from the board.
right.
Yeah.
So I think, we're probably spiraling here. But I think
We
as
are.
far as B09 goes,
Uh-huh.
I think I think this captured what we originally agreed upon,
Right.
which is if you do it, for
Right.
whatever reason, because
Right.
it was mandated or
Right.
voluntary or whatever,
Yeah.
this is what you're gonna have to do with,
Is this strictly for the videos, right?
no, this is in meeting minutes, because that was what was in
Yeah.
here. But it sounds
It's
like
both.
what you read
Well,
Because
yeah,
like-
see,
contradicts that.
that's the problem I have is what's, if you read the homeowners act, and they're not talking about videos. They're talking about minutes of meeting. It goes down and lists all those items.
Mhm.
They have to, it says has to be retained in the depository. So that there's no time when you can remove them.
So it doesn't say in perpetuity.
It mentions nothing
It
about
just says it
committees.
must be retained in the repository.
Yeah,
Okay, Mr. Lawyer. So if the HOA Act says records must be retained in the repository,
it
period,
defines the records that have to be retained.
doesn't say how long,
I think it
Well-
specifies the minutes of the board.
yeah, if it says the minutes
and a
must
lot
be,
of other stuff.
The minutes,
repository.
the bylaws, it goes down, policies, related regulations adopted by the governing body.
so
The
if-
list goes
but
on.
if that's all the language says in the HOA Act, is it reasonable to say, well, we can then define how long? Or is the fact that they don't specify how long means in perpetuity?
Augie's a lawyer.
Augie,
I can't provide legal advice, but honestly, on a
Good.
quick look of the HOA section that Jim cited, it does suggest to me that at least the minutes are to be preserved. And
Yeah,
that
right.
doesn't surprise me. And,
that
doesn't
contradicts.
take up a lot of cloud computing
That's
space
why
to
I-
preserve minutes.
You wrote that, that's why I looked at
Well,
this.
my answer is always you get what you pay for in terms of legal advice.
Make that your preamble.
I I assume legal counsel would look at this at some point.
I think that's right. What I made a note here at the bottom on my copy. What I would do, depending upon how the committee acts, is I would prepare a first reading document for the board and include some of the issues that are not necessarily addressed. The difference between advisory committee and committee with assigned tasks. The HOA Act, where the minutes are to be saved
Right.
in perpetuity. It may be, by the way, that as long as the minutes make it into the depository, there may not be a requirement for the HOA to save the hard copy minutes for a period longer than what the HOA says.
Right.
They're going to save them for. They may be different. I don't know. And then, of course, the other question, which I think you raised, Laura, which is who decides whether or not the committee meetings will be videotaped and whether or not those videos would be saved.
Right.
So those are three issues that I don't think are addressed here and maybe don't have to be addressed here, but that the board should be aware of. And that's what I would include in the document.
Just for clarification, because I didn't think about it until you said it, on the repository issue, are minute meetings required to be in Snow Hill?
We make a copy, but here's the whole list. It starts there, but if you flip back here, there's where it's starting.
Well,
That's-
right, but does this specify, in other words, local repository versus,
No, it says,
County
it finds the depository right there.
The county is the
County. Right.
Each county has an HOA
Deposit
repository.
county.
repository, okay, all right. So what this is saying is, at a minimum, these things have to be in the repository at the county.
They stay
Right.
forever.
So those stay forever. So was the intent of what was in here from the board a local repository in addition to this that was accessible by the members?
So I did not draft this. I don't know. That's why I'm saying what I would do is just call this to the board's attention.
Okay, for clarification.
And say to them,
Yeah.
this is what's in the HOA Act. It's unclear whether you have to follow the HOA Act for the purposes of keeping this in a local file
Mhm.
in perpetuity, or keeping them in the repository in perpetuity suffices. My guess would be, it says it has to be in the repository in perpetuity, that suffices. Based upon what the what I'm being told is we have some limits as to capacity. And we don't want to invest more money to increase our capacity. We would not be, on that basis alone, we would not be in violation, but I don't know. And so my thinking is pass it on to the board. I think Augie is right, that council probably should review this.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean,
The other thing,
I can't answer the question, so.
this does not define whether it has to be filed on paper or electronically. They didn't address it. It assumes everything is paper the way you read it.
And another question is does any place else in our bylaws, do we say, oh, by the way, you gotta put all this stuff in Snow Hill? Or is it just assumed that people know it's in the HOA Act? In other words, because we're calling this records retention policy, right?
Mhm.
So if there is no other records
Well-
retention policy,
You're gonna call that a local.
well, that's where I was going.
The word local should
That's
be
where I was
there.
going with this, because potentially this should be local records retention policy.
Yeah.
And then in the opening paragraph, distinguish between,
In addition, between the depository.
correct.
Well, I'm not sure I would call it local. I would just put in the first sentence.
Homeowners,
A
yeah.
distinguish.
Right, distinguish between
Clause.
Distinguish between
off-site storage.
What's
Yeah.
required under
Deposit.
the
homeowners.
county repository for homeowners act and what is retained
Yeah,
on site, for lack of a
Right,
better
right,
term. That's
yeah, yeah.
probably a better term.
okay.
So, just for my clarification, that I'm still a little confused on whose job is it to make sure all of this gets to the county repository and all of that stuff that, you know, we're coming up with the wording saying that, you know, minutes need to be retained and all of that. Does that fall under the general manager's job description? I'm just.
Yeah, who does it?
Well, the-
Right,
Well,
because I feel like, I, as the committee person, I'm like, am I supposed to say, you know, once we agree on something and it goes to the liaison, it's past the board and all of that stuff, after that, whose job is to make sure it goes there?
Well,
You know,
the
why is
short-
it our,
the
why
short-
is it the committee's job to go down to Snow Hill to make sure things got where they were supposed to?
The short answer, well, okay, so that's two different questions.
Two different subjects.
The short answer to the first question is, I can tell you it's not your job, and it's
Okay.
not the committee's job. That's the first. I would put it to you this way. There are X number of homeowners associations in the state of Maryland,
Okay,
several hundred to be sure, maybe more. Most of them do not have a paid staff. And even some of them don't even have, you know, on a retainer counsel.
right,
What they do is their problem. But, you know, you sort of go back to Bob's point at the very beginning, which is, this is only going to come up if you're being sued.
right.
So the answer is, as best I could tell, would be in part, it's probably a function of the board secretary, the assistant secretary, or executive secretary, whatever term is used, the council we've retained, and the president of the board. There's got to be some, or the GM. There's got to be some mix of those people, in whole or in part, that make sure everything we follow the act, so everything that should be deposited in the repository is there. I would carry it a step further and say to you, I don't think you need to worry about that for the purposes of this.
Right, okay.
Whether or not we ultimately get sued. And somebody says, why the hell didn't somebody take care of this?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother question.
That's a different issue.
But, yeah, I mean,
I mean,
it's a good question. And
we can deal
frankly,
with that later.
frankly, by the way, I would say this. If you all decide to take a road trip down to the repository and you find there is a big problem,
Mhm. You gotta come back and.
that's got to be called to the attention of the board and the general manager
Mhm.
and council to remedy that. And you have gone above and beyond to reach that goal. I mean, I mean, at some point,
Is this a copy?
it falls to somebody else.
You can keep
So
that.
that's the way I look at it.
All right, so it is
Yeah, let's-
2:46 PM.
Can I
We
just
still
make
have,
one other
other
suggestion? if I
items
may?
on
Yes.
this. Uh-huh.
One of, to B09,
Mhm.
at the bottom in archive management, number 2, I haven't quite worked out the language, but I would suggest something that says the general manager or their designee will maintain a log of all videos and minutes, including when videos and meeting minutes are deleted.
Mhm.
And the question is, how long will that log be maintained?
And
If you're gonna,
say that
if you're
one
gonna
more
say
time, the last
maintain a
part.
log, how long? is it?
Well, general manager or their designee will maintain a log of all videos and minutes, including in that log, when meeting videos and meeting minutes are deleted.
Right, and then the
I
next
got you.
question is, how long will that, should that
Well,
log be
The
maintained?
log has to be maintained
Log should be
forever.
like minutes
should be.
maintained
Well,
forever.
I
It
mean,
should be.
Yeah, but that, in terms of record keeping, if we're gonna follow this, then you need to make a notation as to when, I don't think it's as big a deal with the committee videos, that's only 2 months.
The videos are,
But the committee meeting minutes
A minute.
and the videos and minutes of the board, someone comes back in 5 years and 1 month and say, I need to see it, and we pull the log up and say, yeah, not there.
Sorry, that one's gone.
And here's our notation, it was deleted on this date.
Which.
But if you want to read the minutes of the meeting, you can, they're there. They
You
stay.
want to go down to the repository and read it? Go ahead.
right, videos are nice to have, but not a
You don't want to know how
requirement.
many files I still have.
Yeah, I think that. Okay, can we move along so we don't get,
Okay.
There's no way all this stuff is kept down there. There's a lot of stuff.
I know, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But
There's no way.
I think we should go down, take a look with Sarah and then report back. And yes, it's not assigned to our committee as such. We were asked to accommodate a reasonable request, and I think we should do it. And Jim's welcome to go along.
Oh, I think
I'll drive.
Jim probably doesn't
I'll
want
pick
anything
you
to
up,
do with that.
I understand again, years ago, that they are not retaining anything that's not current. For example, you should not find or may not find old ARC guidelines amendments. You should only find the current ARC guidelines, for example. But at one time, when I was down there again 15 years ago, and looked at the Ocean Pines file, there were 4 or 5 amendments to an ARC guidelines that were to an earlier date. It's my understanding, the clerk's office initiated the policy of only current information kept. That's not, I'm not talking about minutes, whatever may be the requirements on minutes. The bylaws, for example, not bylaws back forever, should be the current bylaws. That was their policy announced years ago.
Oh, what,
But-
no one thought?
Yeah, and that's why
Otherwise, you have a policy.
that's why you really need a legal opinion. Because
All right.
it'll never be a problem unless somebody takes you to court because they got a problem and it's not there.
I'm starting to read this differently, I think, than what you wrote it. So who's the governing body?
What?
Governing body or what?
All right.
This says items delivered to the governing body. Who's the governing body?
Board of
Board
Directors.
is the governing
The
body.
Board of Directors is the
In Ocean
governing
Heights,
body.
board
So
is-
I'm not reading that all this stuff goes to the county. I'm reading all this stuff goes to the governing body.
Read the depository.
All right, so if we want
The
to.
following documents.
We want to end on time at 3. It is now 2:50, so we have 10 whopping minutes left, unless you want to go longer.
So we,
On
so
the agenda,
Yeah.
under new business then, do we want to table the rest of those? Or is there anything Jim, is there anything on the agenda that you would like to
Yes.
discuss today in case you can't make the next meeting,
The next meeting is what?
the February 24th, in 2 weeks from now? Because we're on a, right now, through the March one, we're on a every 2 week schedule.
If I understand correctly, Steve, M01 is effectively off the board agenda for 1 to 3 months.
M01 is the ARC,
I'm sorry.
M02,
M02.
yes, M02 is, my recommendation would be to hold it in abeyance for now. I don't think the committee today has taken up M08, which is the manuals, which is the other thing I would like to get before the board, to the February board meeting. And I think the committee still has to make a decision on what they want to do with the records retention resolution.
So I think that what we came to is that it needs more work. So I'm gonna take this back and make some tweaks to it based on what we talked about here. And then also try to capture some of these questions that we were talking about, and then bring that back again to our next meeting.
Is that the B09 one?
Yeah.
That you
Yeah,
did?
record
Okay.
retention,
Uh-huh.
these are 9.
Okay,
And then maybe at that time, we'll basically have a draft with some questions then to go back to the board to
That's fine.
consider. But I think I need to make a couple of tweaks here
That's fine.
first
Okay.
okay. that's
before
fine.
we do that.
All right, so is this what you wanted me to pull up for, M08 Association manuals? This red line copy here? Let's see what else is down here. 'Cause this one has the.
Yeah.
The pages that list the names of the manuals and stuff. All right, so.
If you're gonna,
And again, I apologize for the formatting that occurred down in number 7. All of a sudden, my
Yeah.
laptop started increasing spacing. I have no idea how.
You went to
Yeah.
full justification. That's why it spread it out like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know.
number,
It just sort of jumps, and I don't know why.
And the font's different too.
yeah, number 6 up there, where you have, except only the board may delete the Ocean Pines Financial Policy Manual. It should read and Financial Management Procedures Manual, because those are the 2 manuals that Doug mentioned twice when I looked at the video.
That under here.
Okay, I actually thought in the end, he was just concerned about the policy manual. Procedures manual, I thought he sort of conceded.
If he conceded, then it's not a problem.
Right,
I
but I'll,
I may have misunderstood that.
Here's the, yeah, here's the.
I was not here for that meeting, so I watched the video.
Financial management
And I may have misinterpreted, or he may have changed his mind after that. Because Jim, do you recall, weren't those the 2 that he kept mentioning?
actually, it should not say may delete.
Okay,
It should say may change.
You want to go back up to the red portion, because there's the list of
No.
those 2 manual, the official names.
well, they're right there too.
Yeah.
Ocean Pines Policy Manual, Financial Policy and Financial Procedure.
Procedures and the financial management policy.
They're listed there. So I'm not sure. I only bring that up.
Well, it definitely should not say may delete, it should be may change. I mean,
Yeah.
the word delete is incorrect.
It should be something different than delete, right? And then where it says the manual's reviewed, is biannual spelled correctly there? Normally it's hyphenated, isn't it? In the second sentence.
I think it should be hyphenated. isn't it?
Yeah, it isn't on there.
There's a-
It's not on the original document either, so it's been carried over.
What I can do, if the committee's agreeable to this, is I'll talk to Doug and see if he wanted both the financial
Yeah,
manuals
why don't you?
included or just the policy manual. If he wanted both, I'll put both in,
Okay.
Right,
without having to come back to the committee.
right.
If he's satisfied with just the policy manual, then we'll just leave it as is. That's okay.
And if you want to send that to me, the file,
Yeah,
I can fix that,
okay,
the formatting there.
okay.
And if you want to, you can either send it to me in advance or you can wait until you get this
Right,
answer.
let me, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll rebuild that last section down there for the signatures and all that.
Yeah, that was the only question I had on it.
Yeah, it came through sort of odd, the bottom part. But, you know, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to it. It really got weird. And then when you print out the additional pages, they get all over the place.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, they got,
I mean, it was good that you did this, but we really don't want to get in the habit of the board liaison actually doing the work of the committee, so.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, it was great that you volunteered to do that, but, you know, I'll take that file back now and.
I'll get out of the business.
but he does it. And
He
that's
does,
important.
yeah.
You get the best support we ever
Man.
had.
Well, you know what committee he will hopefully come back to whenever his time is done being, when he chooses not to be a director, he'll come back here, you know,
That's true.
so.
After you
That may
serve,
not be my decision, by the way, but that's okay.
after you serve your 6 full years, you can
Right.
come back.
Right.
Trace, not Trace.
There's 6. You can run again.
I can.
Chooses to, right,
Okay.
all right.
We'll see.
so, Since it is almost 3:00, are we tabling everything else?
I want
Or
to
do you
add
wanna
something
go
to new
over
business.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And Bob brought this to my attention, that there's a resolution online that was approved back in 2017
Uh-huh.
that it's not a complete resolution. It's not assigned a resolution number. And it is signed, it's approved by the board, but it's
I missed that when it happened, and I talked to Jim since.
it has no resolution number.
Probably shouldn't be a resolution. It probably should be a procedure that belongs to the financial group.
Yeah, so what I'm volunteering to do,
Right,
so we can add this for new business for next time,
Okay.
is I'll create a charging document to question what this is, should this be here, should it be converted into a resolution?
Or assigned,
Or assigned to,
take the other approach. Should it be assigned as a procedure to the financial group or,
gotcha. Yep,
yeah, because I agree with Jim. I don't think it should be a resolution because it's a procedure within
the financial manual, right?
the financial manual.
Yeah, okay, so I'll do that.
okay.
Which manual are we talking
And is
about?
that, is that on this part that you were talking
See that on
about?
top where it's highlighted?
Is this what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
that's what I wanted. If we can squeeze this in, at least look
Oh.
at it,
So it's just
because I can make it
finance?
real short.
It's,
Yeah.
Bob found that online. It's included under the F section.
If you go into the book of resolutions and you go to that series right there, convenience fee resolution, it's listed right there, but
Okay.
it doesn't have a number.
Okay,
That's what I brought up that I wanted to review when we do this.
Yeah.
The resolution document, we could, I mean,
so not to, where are we with M08? is the committee approving this
Oh.
or?
M08.
Which is.
Is that what-
we
is
have,
that this?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what this one is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would,
I think we're approving it
I- he's,
unless you find out that we need to add.
yeah,
If that other manual needs to be.
if the other
actually-
manual needs to be added.
Well, okay, my question is, if
It-
Doug, I mean,
If
Doug-
Doug
Doug
says he
wants-
wants it, you'll
can I
put
put
it in.
it in without having to come back to the committee?
You don't have to come back. We agree with that,
Alright,
right?
so do we need to do a formal vote on that, or,
Yeah, I think
That
we can vote.
Huh?
I think we can decide on one way or the other, right?
Yeah,
Assuming no other changes are required,
there's no other
that we
changes,
agree with this as it stands,
right?
right?
And if the only change that would be required, may be required if Doug wants the other manual,
you can
in which case he'll put it in, but I don't think this committee has to look
Well,
at it again.
Yeah, we can agree to that as
Yeah,
well.
we agree that,
Yeah,
right.
and if the only differences will just be formatting cleanup.
Well, that's
So
different.
wording wise, it will be what we see.
And
today.
fix the biannual to one word, I mean, a hyphen.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's a hyphenated one.
Yeah, it's been
Even though it
been
doesn't
like
come
that
up under
in the
Word as
old
a,
one too.
you
Okay,
know, yeah.
okay.
It was wrong there and
I
it's
think
wrong.
we
It's
can
a
have-
typo.
Yeah, so
We have a
I
motion.
so motion to accept the previous discussion related to this and the potential change, and if that is determined to be required, then agree to that as
That
well.
can be done.
I second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No?
Okay, all in favor of approving what we just said?
Aye.
Aye. You got there first.
Any opposed? All right, we're good.
Okay,
You guys are like my PTA meetings, you know, where we start going, oh, what we just said, you know?
What-
So we don't have to keep repeating it, so. All right, so is there anything off the, we'll table everything else, is there anything off the governance document that we need to go over?
I'd like to go over the
Or you
government,
wanna go over that one? Yeah,
this one, because it'll only take a few minutes.
okay. Do you have that?
I think I gave Jim a copy if I did.
Do you have that? Thank you.
What I did was went back to the governing documents, went to the book of resolution, and I was matching our control document to the book of resolutions to see if they're consistent. And the only error I found, and it is that the policy, the convenience fee resolution that was signed by the board and dated February 25th, 2017, is listed as a resolution without a control number. And does it really belong there as a resolution? Or should it be part of the financial management policy manual? And and that Keith agreed to write the charging document for it, so we can see where it really belongs. If it must be a resolution, then it's past due for review by 5 years. So we need to look at that one. And then the only other issue that I have is I went through under the governing documents, resolutions to be reviewed, and they currently have 10 of them posted, which I listed there. However, C09 and C14 have subsequently been reviewed and should be deleted from that list.
and who does that?
I don't know. That's my bottom question at the bottom. And then I also found there are 10 resolutions that are currently being reviewed. Most of them are really past due, and they're not listed on the website as resolutions to be reviewed. And they are BO2, BO3, BO5. I have them listed there. So my question is to determine who's responsible for keeping the OPA website posted current, and how this committee can assist in that endeavor.
Yeah, I think that's been a combination of Linda and maybe now Michelle is my guess, because previous to yesterday's training, it was noted that Linda said for me to send her our minutes and our agenda, and she would put it on the website. You know,
Right.
now they're saying they're having this Michelle be the point of contact for all of that.
Okay.
So so to me, I would interpret is maybe that falls under her jurisdiction too.
I left that up to you to choose.
That would-
You, as committee chair.
Oh. I can find
That's your
out,
call.
yeah.
Well,
I can.
But I think we need to find, so we can help whoever it is.
I understand. I guess what I think would be helpful
Okay,
would be if you, Laura, were to send me an email, I would then forward it to Doug and John and, get these questions asked. Now, bear with me 1 second.
I can send you the
You
electronic
send
format
me
of that.
yeah.
You can copy as an
I took a
example.
picture of it and emailed it to Augie. I don't know if you got that. Because I don't have the document that Bob just gave us today. I didn't have it in my computer to be able to
I
screen
just
share.
did that this morning.
So,
when I looked at it last night. I was trying to get consistency between what we're working on and what's on the website.
Right.
I've got,
Well, and that's
So-
what Keith had kind
No,
of
he
done when
started
he said he
together.
was bored that one day.
Yeah,
And I noticed that that's what started my questioning. I wasn't looking at all of the actual documents and resolutions, but I was just looking at the committee info and realized our agendas and minutes weren't kept up to date on the website.
yeah, I noticed there's a gap there.
So, yeah, so I've been
Just-
trying to,
just to be clear.
Go ahead.
I've got, working from your document, Bob.
Okay,
C14, I believe, is aquatics, and that was approved
that one was just done on the January
at the last
21st
board
meeting.
meeting.
yeah, C09 and C14 should
Right.
come down.
Okay, I'm not sure, I don't, C14 I don't remember C09. B04, I have in my note here that it was accepted by the board, also at the January board meeting.
Which one?
Yeah, B04,
B04.
you have the notes here say reviewed 123 with no changes. So was it reviewed or approved?
I have it as approved, accepted by the board. That's what I wrote myself a note here. That it was accepted by the board. Because there are no changes recommended.
Okay,
And C09, yes, same thing. It was accepted by the board.
yeah.
All right, and so I updated the date. Didn't I? I did not. No, I did not.
Yeah, you have the date. there.
Right, and now I also have,
Yeah, right there, January 20th.
Yeah, you have it. You have it there,
Yeah, so it's up there.
okay, so,
but it should be taken off.
Off of this.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm working from Bob's list.
Yeah.
So,
So I missed that one.
and I
B0.
have,
Go ahead.
that's right. We'll deal with B01, which is the book of resolutions. And I've got B07, which is petitions, F03, which was the reserve account for drainage,
Mhm.
and N05, which is animal control, are all up for second readings, and I'm assuming approval, which I'll take care of at the March meeting. And then we're working on B03. I thought I had some others. I need to go through and see what I got here.
Yeah, because I think if we could get the resolutions for review to be consistent with what we're showing, it would make it a real easy management tool, because you can go in there and look at any time which ones are past due.
Okay,
So just for my clarification, this section here on our website for resolutions for review,
If you click on that,
I thought that what this section was for was to provide to the public any documents that the board was going to be reviewing.
right,
So that public has the same documents to look at as the board's going to be looking at, in
right.
case they wanted to comment on them.
Go ahead, Jim, got a question.
Was intended to be those resolutions to be amended or a new resolution before the board,
Right,
not to review it.
right.
Just do.
ones that were,
In action. Truly in action, either to be approved, either an amendment or a brand new one.
right.
Yeah, that's what that resolution for review.
So in other words, not everything that we're working on was
Yeah,
beyond
they're-
the agenda.
That's right. Only what goes, what's before the board for them to act on to approve.
Basically what's on their agenda, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right, so I've got,
Or second reading.
Well, were any of these that I have listed then that we're showing past due?
That would not be, should not.
But are they on the board agenda? If they're on the board agenda,
Well, that's what Steve's been trying to do,
Right,
is to get these before the board.
right,
so we can
so
update it.
just so
Go
that
ahead.
we're clear, I've got in front of me charging documents from this committee to the board. Most of them Jim did over the summer, for 02, 5, and 6. I think that's the only ones I've got that I have not even gotten to the board for, just as charging documents.
And that's what my tracker says, yeah.
So those, I would be prepared to bring those up.
okay.
I can probably do it for the March meeting. If you really want me to, I'll do it for the February meeting. We probably should take Jim's name off and put your name on. I mean, you're down here on the bottom, but you're not at the top.
Please.
And so then if you submit those to be added to the agenda, and they get added to the agenda,
Right.
then they should pop up on the website here
Right.
as these are gonna get reviewed by the board as part of their agenda.
Right,
Right.
just so that we're clear. We, committee and I do not have any control as to what gets on the website in any particular order.
Right.
What we have to do and what Laura needs to send to me and I'll forward on, because that's the way they want to do things nowadays, is the question as to who is controlling what's on the website that reflects board action and or committee action, as it applies to the book of resolutions, which I think is in part what Bob is asking.
Right.
Is that fair?
That's fair. That's exactly what I want. But I wanted to clarify one point with Jim. And that is, if we write a charging document and give it to the board and they've looked at it, it should be there that should be posted as resolutions to be reviewed.
That was the original intent.
It was not?
The original intent was only something that the board, a resolution amendment or a new amendment that the board had to approve. In other words, once it goes to something that goes to first reading
Right.
on a resolution would go under resolution for review
Okay.
and then stay there until it's either approved or decided we're not going to go forward with it.
So to use that as an example, the discussion we had today on the annual meeting, B03, which has already got a first reading back in the summer. That would be on that list that.
That would be on there.
But these resolutions, which are just charging documents at this point.
They tell the board that such and such a time's gone by.
Right.
It's due for review. That would not, the original intent was that would not go on this resolutions for review.
Right, but they still, these are all board resolutions that the board should have acted on by now and they haven't.
Right.
So we still need to get them up in front. It'd just not be on that list, it'd be on a different list.
For instance, B3,
It's on your tracking and it'll be on an agenda item, but
Right.
they have to be on the website of being reviewed.
Yeah, my understanding is that the purpose of this was to meet the requirement for public notice.
right. Now, if you look at B3, we're saying B3, or no, not B3, B2, let me find it here. Okay, they're still charging documents, so that's why they're not there.
Yeah, see, a charging, there's nothing for the public to review on a charging document because it doesn't necessarily mean anything's gonna happen.
But B03 has already had a first reading.
Yeah, so it should be
So
there.
B03 should be there.
Right.
It
right.
should be there.
But as what I'm looking at, this, look, I only know what I got, so.
Right.
So what I'm saying to you.
You're ahead of most liaisons.
B02, B05, B06,
Yeah,
are charging documents.
Just charging documents. So they would not be on here.
okay.
Right. Now, some of these others, I think we're gonna have to go back and do a little work on, because I'm not sure where they are because of the gaps, that's fallen through the cracks.
Well, let me go back, once I update this from our notes today, let me go back through this. And I'll basically send out an email to the group and say, based on our current status, it seems to me
These are the ones.
that these are the ones that should be on the
Should be there.
website
Yeah.
because these are before the board. And therefore there should be public notice on them.
Right,
They're before the board for action.
right,
Right.
Therefore there should be public notice.
right.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, because I caught the charging
Yeah.
documents and I listed them and
Yeah.
that's incomplete.
So that way, if somebody in the membership has a strong opinion about one of these,
That's
Well,
what
for
we can
instance-
Do their public comment
Correct.
portion and. have
you guys are gonna
something to-
review this thing
right.
today, and I just want you to know.
Or even if they're not reviewing it that day, they can say, I know it's coming up soon.
Right.
Here's my thoughts, for the
Right.
next meeting or whatever.
So people can
But
make informed,
yeah, Right.
yeah, yeah.
It's the transparency part, yeah.
right. Now,
Okay.
the only thing I would say is
Okay.
some of the
Thank you, Jim.
F01, F04, M06, M07, M08, we're gonna take care of,
M08 is listed.
is the manuals, right?
Mhm.
So,
Correct.
But some of the others, I don't have any information on at all, so
Most,
we're gonna have to go back through, sort out our history here.
yeah, if
Let's
you,
figure out which ones first we think should be there,
right,
and then we can figure
do
out,
it from your document
Yeah.
there, because,
and then we'll figure out what we have available if it's not there.
right,
Because I'll do both. I'll say, well, this is what I think should be on there, and this is what's there.
yeah, because my question would be, if it had the first reading, it definitely should be there. And if it hasn't had the first reading, yes, it's past due, but it doesn't belong there,
And if it's still
which is
listed,
my error for listing it down below, but
and we should make sure that if it's listed.
They're theoretically-
it has already had
that
the
second line,
reading,
that
it's
listed is
done,
more
then it
past
doesn't
due
need to be there
Right.
anymore.
with
Right?
charging
So
documents.
Once
any
it's
of
approved.
those,
But-
right,
Right.
If it's
right,
full.
But we
just
can
to
also
double check.
pick up Jim's point about which go on which list.
Yes,
That would sort of clarify.
yeah, Jim straightened that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
The resolution for review portion takes out of the board package if somebody is really interested in commenting on it. The board package in effect is a notice of what the board's gonna do. But it also, if you wanna comment on it, you gotta go in and somehow extract it out of there and read through the whole, read through it and scroll through it, and then it's nothing, then it's the board packet. And see what you wanna look at and just think about it there. Otherwise, you can go over the resolutions for review and pick that out specifically. That's the.
Yep, that makes
That's the
sense.
only advantage, not the only, but that's an advantage of having that portion of a website.
Right.
Yeah, I think I tried to find it, but I think I read that it's a requirement somewhere that when a redlined resolution is going to be put before the board for a change, that it be made available to the
Should be a B01.
public for, I read it somewhere.
Yeah. we-
So-
B01.
So that would meet that requirement. Okay, all right.
Okay, so anyway,
We still have the issue of the unnumbered.
I'm going to create a charging document for that.
Yeah, the unnumbered.
To ask the board what they want to do about it.
right, yeah, I got the charging documents listed,
Okay. So
and that's incorrect.
is there anything
They're
else
past
pressing
due.
for today?
That's it, let's,
I only have a couple of updates that I noted on here.
Okay.
I'm gonna go through those real quick.
Sure.
B01, it's gonna be presented, the final is gonna be presented to the February board meeting.
Okay.
B03, for further review, next meeting.
Okay.
B03. Which one? And, oh, yeah, so that's gonna get tweaked and we're going to. B03.
That's meeting association members, right?
That's, yeah, meeting of association, that was the red lines we looked at, right?
Right.
Yes,
B03.
yeah,
Mhm.
right.
And that's the one that, did we agree to? I can't remember now.
We were gonna hold for further discussion at February 24th.
Yeah, but was
Okay.
there any action on it?
No, we just delayed it.
The committee's gonna take it. up
Oh,
again.
okay, that's the one we were gonna look at the HOA stuff, right?
Yeah,
Or give everybody an opportunity. Okay, so we're gonna continue to work on that one
right.
and talk again at the next meeting. My next update was on B09. That's gonna get some tweaks
Right.
and we presented at our next meeting.
No,
No, no,
it's gonna,
That's the one.
that's record.
Yeah,
he's-
yeah, okay.
we approved it.
So we approved that one.
We approved it and,
Oh, no, I'm gonna make some tweaks to it, and we approved that to be submitted to the board
right,
with those tweaks.
right.
Gotcha. And I'll send that out to the group within the next couple
And
of
as
days.
soon as he decide or has chance to decide whether to add the one addition to it.
No, wait. We're
That's-
talking about B09.
B09.
Yeah, records retention.
Right,
Yeah.
you're tweaking.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make a couple
He's
of
gonna
tweaks
fix
to the
up the
And
language.
M08 is what I'm gonna do with.
Right.
On the map.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make a couple of tweaks to this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add some language down here. I'm gonna put that distinguishing comment up
I'm
there in
mixing,
front. And then I'll send that out to the group and then, Steve can take that to the board, the next board meeting.
Mhm.
I made a note to myself for what I'm calling F05, which doesn't technically exist, but it's the convenience fee
Right.
weirdo document that's on the website. That I'm gonna create a charging document for that to ask the board what to do about it.
Okay,
M02, I put down, that's gonna be put on hold,
Right.
or that's been put on hold by the board of directors for further consideration. On M06, I noted that it was signed off and is being posted, and the date is 1/16/23. Is that right? Well, what's gonna be the date of it? I guess I can look online.
What's
Yeah.
M06?
M06, yeah.
From the last director meeting?
Well, when they officially approved it and signed the document, what that date is, because I have to update the tracker.
it would have been at that board meeting.
Well, that
M06.
January meeting was 121. I know that.
Approval date.
I-
The resolution approval date will be the date of the board.
Right,
In
meeting,
the summer,
right.
Last summer, the signature dates are
Right.
when they signed it.
right, so, that
What's
should
the
be,
date of the board meeting?
well, what happened was they completed action and nobody signed it or dated it. That's.
Yeah, because my last update in here was that they said updates were necessary. And now we jump from updates are necessary to it's been signed off and approved. So I'm just asking, when did that
Well,
happen?
let me put it to you this way. The action taken in the summer, and this goes back to, I don't know whether Bob or, one of you two guys raised and says, it's not in the book of resolutions.
Right.
And the board completed action on M06. That document, the one that was in the summer, should be posted. Now, the next question is, are there going to be additional suggestions made or amendments to M06 because we have a new elections committee? I think is likely, but I don't know that for sure. The last thing I saw was either a committee report or a memo, I can't remember which said, the committee is working on changes to M06, the elections committee.
Right.
So
And that's the
we sort of have two things going on here. The June or July, whenever it was worked on in the summer, that should be done. As a done document, it should be posted. If not already posted, it should be posted soon. Because I saw
Okay,
people
all right.
signed off on it.
Because the last time I looked at this, and then Bob just went through this again,
Yeah.
the document that's in there is still a 2020 document.
Right, now, and that, so we should have gotten halfway home.
All right, so I'll update the
But
note.
whether or not there'll be additional changes to M06, I'm assuming are likely, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay,
Now supposedly I think we're supposed to get a briefing at the February board meeting, but I'm not sure where that is.
okay. Well, technically, if the date gets updated to last summer for the posting of it, it's not due for review, so we don't even care about it yet.
Right, we
That's
don't care
correct.
about it.
All right, so I'll update that note. And then that was the last note that I had for the tracker. Did I miss anything?
And then the MOA, did we already discuss that? I mean, I know we agree, what we agreed to.
M08 is the association manuals.
And so the MOA, what was the,
That was, he's gonna check with Doug to see whether or not,
to add the
and
financial?
then he's gonna send it to you and you're gonna clean it up, but we approve it.
You're
Right.
gonna fix the.
It's already approved at this meeting.
Right, so I'm
Manual,
gonna
and then
talk
I'm
to
just gonna
Jeff.
clean up the format.
Right.
Clean up the format and fix the word biannual.
I'm gonna talk to Doug and then I'll shoot you whatever I've got.
Typo.
Got it.
I went back and looked. It's been like
Which
that
didn't
forever.
show up as long on my Word document. It doesn't, you know how they.
Biannual.
I know, but,
Got it.
Word,
Okay.
it's fine as is.
okay, now we're in agreement with
All
everything, right?
All right.
I think so.
Okay,
Thank you.
last
Mr.
call for
Liaison.
anything.
Alcohol.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
getting there.
thank you again for always coming for the last couple of months. And you know, that door is always open. And if I need to bring snacks, I'll bring snacks for you, you know? But, next meeting, just to confirm that we're on the same page, is, Friday, February 24th. Same thing, hybrid, 1 to 3, either in person or virtual. Just let me know which one you're doing, so I know if I'm
February what?
looking up and.
24th, correct.
Right.
Okay, yep,
February 24th.
got it.
After that, the next one would be March 10th. Okay, so we have technically 2 meetings before the March director meeting. To get,
You're going to say about B03, which is
Let's go
the
with your
virtual.
book.
So the 24th, the 10th of March, and the 31st of March.
correct,
Oh,
yeah.
that, we're gonna make some tweaks and updates to it and we review it at this meeting.
Okay.
That's needed. Because people want to be able to go back and
I don't
review.
have
some,
it on my, this calendar. I know it's on my my
To review
Right.
handwritten calendar.
that next meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, I just want to make.
Does
sure.
anyone object to adjourning the meeting?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
3:28 PM,
I second.
okay? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Augie, so 3:28 was the adjourn time, okay?
Audrey, are you gonna be able to figure out all these notes now?
So, all right.
I'll send around draft.
Thank you, Augie.
Thank you.
Hope you feel better too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.